Morning, everyone. Virgo Triad here. It is September 11th, 2018, and I am back from my long weekend, and I hope everyone had a good weekend also. I wanted to direct your attention to a comment that was left for me over the weekend by one Jeff Finley, and I wanted to thank Jeff for leaving this comment, as I think it is one that is going to be helpful in the video that I'm doing this morning, which goes into great length some information that's actually in my ebook. And this points out some things with regards to the victim and martyr mentality that we're seeing in a lot of the so-called truther movements that are out there on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter and other social media platforms. Jeff says great points about how people feel like victims and are constantly outraged at one thing or another. From my experience deep in the truth communities on YouTube for several years, I have noticed both left-wing and right-wing have different opinions on the same core fact, that someone out there is bad and evil and is oppressing you. They take everything that they can imagine that is evil and project it onto the other group, be it Nazis, Jews, straight white males, Christians, Muslims, reptilians, Satan, pedophiles, politicians, etc. The outrage machine thrives on it, and being a victim grants you a certain power in today's world. So I'm really glad you made that point. Do you know any other resources for this type of meta discussion on the truther community at large? I'll check out Scam Stingers, but would love more content like this. Thank you for that comment, Jeff, and I'm going to be going into some of the information that I have pulled together over the last year while pulling research for my ebook with regards to the victim mentality and the martyr syndrome. It is prevalent. It's very, very big and running rampant in the truther communities, especially the anti-government communities. That's, under the umbrella of the so-called sovereign citizen or patriot movement. They thrive, their scams thrive on that victim mentality in those that they are scamming. And that's why this video is going to be important for people to see. No matter what side of the fence you are on in the truther movement in terms of being someone that watches the truther channels, this is not by any means to say that everything that a truther says is inaccurate, or everything that an anti-government entity or person or group says is absolutely not correct. That's not what this is about. This is about something that's very specific, that is becoming a real serious problem across the internet with people that have a mentality that they are victims and that they were victims unknowingly, and what that is providing for them from a psychological standpoint, and then moving that forward, how that trips them up into falling for scams like the TDA account scam, for example, and several other scams that are out there. So we're going to be addressing that today. The first thing that I'm going to do is take you through what the martyr mentality really actually is, and why it's there, why it's something that people fall back on. So stay tuned with me. We're going to be taking a look at that today. And again, thank you, Jeff, for your wonderful comment here. It opens up a brand new discussion that I've wanted to get into for a while. For those of us that are really trying to take a look at the conspiracy / truther movement channels that have been kind of really thriving on this for about the last 10 to 15 years, seriously. So here we go. Okay, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about what's most frequently in psychology called the martyr complex. A lot of people also refer to it as the victim complex. And in psychology, a person who has the martyr complex, sometimes, like I said, associated also with the term victim complex, desires the feeling of being a martyr for his or her own sake, seeking out suffering or persecution because it either feeds a psychological need or a desire to avoid responsibility. Now, that's a big thing that I want to talk to you guys about, the desire to avoid responsibility. Unfortunately, in the case of a lot of the truther conspiracies, and we're going to refer to it as conspiracies for this video only, just simply because that is really what it boils down to with the scams. They're conspiracy theories that end up being something that isn't true, but they're built on some portions of truths some of the time, and therefore they're hard. It's very difficult to piece them apart without doing a tremendous amount of research. And people misunderstand what research really is. Let me go into that just for a moment too. The martyr complex is something, as I stated, that is a psychology in a person that tells you that if you are being victimized in some manner, then that makes you null and void of responsibility for what has occurred. So let me give you an example of that. For those people that believe in the TDA accounts, for example, and they believe, even though their claim is that they are, say, a conservative, okay, even though the TDA account concept goes directly against the belief structure of a conservative, because conservatives believe that you work very hard and you earn a good living. And when you earn a good living, you don't let it go easily. You make sure that you check out anything you're investing in, or that you check out any charity you're giving to, because you've worked very, very hard for that money. You don't give it away easily. So therefore, you don't believe in large government, because large government quite frequently means more social services. And that means taking more tax dollars out of your money that you have worked, or out of your pocket, of the money that you have worked very, very hard to accumulate and secure your family, and taking it and giving it to others. All right, so conservatives don't traditionally believe in doing that unless it's a very good cause and they've thoroughly checked it out. However, a larger percentage of conservatives actually have been ones to fall for the TDA account scam. And the reason why they're falling for it is this martyr complex. The martyr complex suggests that in the event that someone like government has stolen your identity, which of course is one of the trigger words that is used quite frequently by the truther channels that push this idea, and they have supposedly fooled your parents into believing that you're just collecting a birth certificate at birth, but in reality, they're taking your birth certificate and they're selling it on the stock market, even though you have no proof of it. And so therefore, the system is set up against you already, and there's money somewhere in your name that's been stolen from you, and you deserve to have that money back because you're in debt. Now, notice in this scenario, what I'm stating is that there is a lot of people that believe that they deserve to have that money because it's in their name, even though the money doesn't actually exist, and nor does the account itself. But in their mind, because it is something that they have been victimized of, they deserve to have that money. And as a result of that, it gives them a get-out-of-jail-free card, so to speak, from their debt. The debt that they have created themselves, the debt that they have gotten themselves into by either unknowingly pulling out large interest credit cards and using them to the hilt, and then having something happen in their family that made it to where they couldn't pay them, or because they are drowning in debt for the moment because they have overspent beyond their means. It gives them a get out of jail free card for that. So therefore, they're more than willing, because it serves their specific agenda, and it gives them that get out of jail free card, to take a listen to the likes of people like LaJune, who are claiming that therefore, since you have been robbed of this supposed right, and you have had your identity stolen by the evil government, you now should be able to write off all of your debts with accepted for value, and you no longer will be in debt. Some go so far, like LaJune, to claim that you can take an entire home your entire mortgage and write it off because you're owed that. Well, you're not owed that. The entire thing is a scam. But this is the reason why people are falling for the scam. Now, let's just go a little bit deeper with the martyr complex and see where it leads us with this victim mentality and how it can end up getting you in a lot of hot water. But even more importantly, how it is that you can stop your brain from going in that direction in the first place. Okay, so one of the things I'd like for you guys to do is to take a look at this graph right here. This is the mind of the martyr. This is the personality of the victim. And this is something that I would like for you to take a look at while I'm reading to you some of the complex checklist that you will find in this victim or martyr mentality. And here we're going to go ahead and examine the martyr complex more in depth. All signs and examples that I'm going to be phrasing are going to be in the third person, okay? Now, there are a few instances in here where the martyr personality or the victim personality is predisposed. And that's something that everybody can take a look at and kind of see, well, there may be reason behind why this party actually believes this way that is either a psychological reason or a social culture reason. And in those cases, although it's still not excusable, in terms of relieving responsibility, there is a reason. There's a predisposed psychology behind it that people are raised with. But in the majority of these things, you're going to see some things that look very familiar to you, that you have witnessed. The majority of you will have already witnessed on the Truther channels, on YouTube, on the Truther sites, on the internet, on all of social media, with those especially that are heavy into conspiracy theories. So number one, the person has a martyr as their hero, such as Joan of Arc, Gandhi, Jesus, or perhaps a parent or grandparent who abandoned all of their hopes and dreams in service of the family. Number two, they were born into a culture, country, or family that has very strict gender roles, religious creeds, or expectations. Number three, they display signs of low self-esteem, such as inability to receive love or affection, negative body image, excessive judgmentalism, moodiness, etc. And these again are traits. I want you guys to pay attention to these traits because we're going to start getting into things here in this checklist that you see all the time. Number four, they were abused as a child emotionally, psychologically, or physically by a parent, sibling, family member, church member, teacher, etc. Number five, they have stayed in an abusive relationship or friendship, even despite their ailing health and well-being, and it's created some form of a post-traumatic stress type of disorder for them. Number six, they refuse to accept responsibility for the decisions and choices that have caused them pain and suffering in the past. Number seven, they portray themselves as righteous, self-sacrificing, the nice guy or girl, the saint, the caretaker, or the hero. Number eight, they blame the selfishness and the inhumanity of other people for their repression and oppression. Now, we've talked about that. Number nine, they seek to reassure themselves of their innocence and greatness. Number 10, they exaggerate their level of suffering, hardship, and mistreatment. Number 11, they have a cynical, paranoid, or even suspicious perception of other people's intentions. Number 12, they have an obsessive need to be right 100% of the time. Number 13, they have had a hard time saying no in the past or setting personal boundaries. Number 14, they assume that other people can read their minds and know what they're thinking. Number 15, they emotionally manipulate or coerce people into doing what they want by portraying themselves as noble sufferers. Number 16, they don't take initiative to solve their problems or try to actively remedy them. Number 17, when the martyr's problems are solved, they find even more problems to complain about. Number 18, they actively seek appreciation, recognition, and attention for their efforts by causing and creating drama. All right, so this is the checklist of the martyr or victim mentality personality. And so these are very, very important because without having these within the personality, whether it's a predisposed disorder or whether it is something that is simply an adopted part of the personality, without having these mindsets, it's virtually impossible to fall for these types of scams that the Virgo Triad channel talks about. And I want you to take a look really hard at how some of these can really be something that each and every one of us has dealt with in our own personality in the past. As adults, things happen all the time that make us feel certain ways that are very similar to what the checklist is that I just read. Not all, but certain ones. When you work really hard to get a specific job and you go to that interview, and after, years and years of working up to try to get that position, you don't get it. That's one that can make you feel weakened and have that martyr personality. A marriage that you've worked on for years and years and years. You've been married 23 years, you have 4 kids, and it's just not working out, and you fail at that relationship. That can throw you into a martyr type of personality. Being a selfless mother who has an autistic child that gives and gives and gives and gives until they're 18 or 19 years old, and and they run into inadvertently, quite frequently, they run into almost like a midlife crisis type of scenario because they have given so much of themselves that they have lost their own identity in it. They're now no longer that person. Now they are simply whoever's mom. Okay? These are things that can weaken a personality and actually turn you in to a person who has that victimization mentality or that martyr complex that we're discussing, that can throw you into the ring of being able to understand and feel exactly the same way a lifetime martyr complex personality does. And this is why it's particularly dangerous, these specific scams that we're dealing with, because next I'm going to be taking you over to an area that will help you to understand a little bit better what the psychology of a con artist like April LaJune and many others that are online talking about this scam we've been dealing with on the Virgo Triad channel, the TDA account scam, for over a year and a half now. All right, we're going to go over the anatomy of a scam, the anatomy of a con artist, and show you how this fits into it. Okay, so one of the very first steps of compiling together a scam that is going to work on the majority of the people that are weakened in their mindset and have the victim mentality that is needed in order for a scam like this to actually work. The first thing that needs to be created by the con artist is rage. All right. I don't mean just regular anger. I mean rage. And for an example of what I mean by that, let's just look back at what has been used in this TDA account, secret account, the government straw man, scam, and let's just take a look back at what you've been told that would make you enraged. One of the things that would make you enraged is being told that your parents were fooled when you were born into giving you away into slavery at birth. That's something that would make you enraged. It's not true, but it doesn't matter. The point about it is to make you angry and to make you angry enough that you are raging inside. There's a specific reason for that. We're going to go into that in just a minute. Secondarily, one of the things that you're told is that there has been a secret trust account or bank account open for you that has millions of dollars in it. And as a result of that, all of your indebtedness has been done on purpose in order to keep you a slave in the actual country that you're in, because this is widespread. This is not just in the US. And as a result, you are once again a slave. Now notice the trigger words: slave, Slave, slave. This is a trigger word. It's a trigger word that works on every single person of every single race. It has been something that has been used as a trigger word for many, many, many hundreds of years. And at this point, the rage of it, because of all of the wonderful workings of individuals that have attempted to try to stop bigotry and have attempted to try to stop racism, it makes it even 100 times more powerful than it ever has been before. Now, why is it that terms like slave and and well, we'll just use slave as an example. Why is it that that is used so often? Why is that brought up all of the time? It is because it immediately initiates rage. Now, rage, whether you realize it or not, is actually an emotion that feels good. People seek out rage. I know that sounds funny to you, but I'm going to explain to you why that is done. Now, remember what I said. We're not just talking about basic anger. Anger quite often covers up things like fear, you know, and dread and these sorts of things, and embarrassment, humiliation. We're not just talking about basic anger. We're talking about a notch above that, where we go straight into outright rage. Anger is an emotion that usually is experienced when a person feels that their rights have been violated. In such cases, the purpose of anger is to motivate a person to take their rights back. Now, in this case, we're talking about literal rights, but a lot of times, you know, we're dealing with emotional rights and that kind of thing, and this encompasses all of it. So even if anger is a bad emotion, in some cases it still has a very useful purpose, all right, but rage is something that will actually create an emotion that makes a person destroy objects in their home. We're talking about an amped up level of anger, as I said. The main purpose of rage is to help the person become in control, and that's why it feels good. A person will experience rage when they believe that they have completely lost control. Completely lost control, like being called a slave and you didn't even know it. Right before experiencing rage, a person might feel hurt, helpless, or humiliated. Because those feelings can make any person feel really bad, rage comes as a magical solution that instantly helps a person feel very, very strong and powerful and in control. As soon as a person experiences rage, their mental state changes from being helpless to being superior to the attacker. Someone's neck, then certainly you will believe that you are superior to them. So, like let's just use this as an example. All right, since we're already there. You are told that your parents were tricked into selling you to the state as an infant. You were told that you were sold into slavery. That's not only you, that's your parents that were tricked and you were sold into slavery. This makes you feel helpless. It makes you feel angry. And then on top of that, you're told that your birth certificate is taken, monetized, turned into a trust that is traded on the stock market. And you've got millions of dollars that are in your stolen name. Yet you're drowning in debt, you're going to work, you're working 2 jobs, you're taking care of 4 kids, you can barely pay the rent, and you can barely put food on the table. Now you even feel more helpless, you feel more powerless, you feel more humiliated. And you were, by the way, behind the scenes, a total slave, completely ignorant and stupid to this, and as a result of it, you become enraged. That rage is necessary, and here is the reason why when it comes to the anatomy of the con artist. Okay, here's a trigger warning for everybody before I get deeper into this. You're going to hear some words that the truther community uses on a regular basis. These are also trigger words, like it's a distraction. There's a reason why those things are being used quite often, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. Weapons of mass distraction. You've heard of that, right? It's because in a lot of these cases, not all, but in a lot of these cases, there is a distraction principle as the very second step to the anatomy of a scam. The first is to enrage you by giving you information, be it actual information that's factual or not, okay? Does not make a difference. In the anatomy of a scam, there's a reason why you have to be enraged, and that is because that enragement distracts you. It distracts you and keeps you thrown off of what would ordinarily be rational and critical thinking skills that you would use in order to determine whether or not somebody is telling you the truth. It's imperative that the con artists throw you off of that. Secondarily, social compliance. The social compliance principle is the third step to the anatomy of a scam or a con artist that's running a scam, and that is that society trains people not to question authority. Con artists exploit this suspension of superstitiousness to make you do what they want. Take a look at the word that I have up here from the dictionary for you. It's the word sheeple. Sheeple. It's a noun that suggests that people can be compared to sheep in being docile, foolish, or easily led. Now, how many times have you heard sheeple used as a word on a so-called truthers channel? It is another word that instills anger, another word that instills rage, another word that suggests that you need to be socially compliant. And that social compliance principle is very, very important because it leads us to the next principle of a scam, which is the herd principle. The herd principle basically guarantees this to the con artist. Even suspicious marks will let their guard down when everyone next to them appears to share the same risks, because people tend to believe that there's safety in numbers. But there's not safety in numbers if everybody is conspiring against each other. And what I mean by that is, you hear the word sheeple. We're going to use April LaJune as an example because she is a perfect example in this scenario also. All right. April LaJune is a con artist. A lot of people don't recognize that she is because she uses the principles I'm going over with you right now. Her social compliance principle relies on the fact that she claims to be gaining expertise from from these anonymous parties that are somehow in the know, for example. And as a result, you as a listener are a elite selected group of individuals that are learning this very specific process that will allow you to get out of the so-called matrix or system that has enslaved you and keeping you from being a ultimate sheeple. She uses that word also. The herd principle works like this. You will notice that if you start asking questions to April on her chat or on her comment section, those comments quickly get deleted, and if you do it on her chat, she ultimately deletes you and silences you. You will also notice that the rest of the people that are on her comment section or are on her specific chat will begin to attack you. And they will attack you because they are part of that herd principle. They don't even realize that they have now become part of the sheeple. They are being puppeted by the puppet master, who is known in this case as April LaJune. She's using these principles in order to build up more anger and more rage. After the herd principle is the dishonesty principle, which has actually been going on the entire time. But by this point, you're so angry already, a lot of times you don't recognize it. Your larceny is what hooks you initially. Thereafter, anything illegal you do will be used against you by the fraudster. The dishonesty principle becomes part of the play when there is the talk of the dishonesty of the government, for example, in this case, using the birth certificate in order to monetize it and trade you on the stock market. Okay. That's dishonest, and anything that you actually attempt to try to do to stop that from happening will be used against you, and you will be made an example of, as though you are indeed the fraudster yourself, even though supposedly the government has stolen your identity and is the true fraud. And they mimic these specific examples over and over and over again. I'll give you an example of how I know this to be true. In my comment section, literally at least one time a day on every single video, I have someone who has come in and made the statement that the real fraud is the Federal Reserve. The real fraud in this case is not the people attempting to commit bank fraud, attempting to commit bond fraud, attempting to commit theft. That's not the real fraud anymore. The real fraud is now the government that actually is allowing the Federal Reserve or working with the Federal Reserve in order to commit fraud and to commit theft and identity theft against you as the person. But there is a second part to the deception principle. The deception principle also comes into play with regards to the con artist. So you will notice, if you take a look at April LaJune's website at tdaaccount.org, that there's a section at the bottom of all of the pages that state that she's not responsible for what happens to you, in legalese, in the event that you decide to allow her to sell you one of these wonderful packages that will get you separated from the matrix and the system. In the event that you decide to send in the paperwork, now you are the one who is responsible. So if things don't go right, it is not her problem. That is also part of the deception principle. Things and people are not what they seem. Con artists know how to manipulate you to make you believe that they are. So, the dishonesty principle and the deception principle work together, and in this case, what is happening is not only the fact that they are making you believe that there is a government entity or some entity out there that's oppressing you, but also if you take action, they will help you. But if you get caught and you get in trouble, it's on you. All they did was fill out the paperwork. Ultimately, it leads you down a path that is the biggest and worst principle, and it ultimately is the one that makes you fall for the scam, and that is the need and greed principle. Your needs and desires make you vulnerable. Once con artists know what you really want, they can easily manipulate you by claiming to be able to fulfill a need. And quite often, your own need and greed is what will make you jump over the line from, I don't know about all of this, it doesn't make logical sense, to I'm willing to grasp at a straw. And that is what the TDA secret account, straw man, birth certificate monetization scam creates literally almost every single time with someone who is vulnerable with the martyr or victim complex. Because of the fact that you are drowning in debt, or because of the fact that you are so enraged of what you have been told with regards to the conspiracy theory of the supposed monetized birth certificate and trust account with millions in it, that is the greed part, and the need part is the fact that you are in debt. You want it. And ultimately, that's what makes you fall for the scam. All April LaJune is doing is providing you with the possibility, the last straw that might allow you to grasp and get that pot of gold, which, by the way, doesn't exist, because this is the anatomy of a scam. Lastly is the time principle. The time principle is pretty easy to figure out. When you are under time pressure to make an important decision, you use a different decision strategy cognitively. And con artists steer you towards one involving less reasoning. You don't have the time, okay? How many times have you heard April LaJune, for example, talk about the fact that if you don't get this taken care of and done prior to 2020, the UCC one's going to be taken off the table? First of all, the UCC one has absolutely nothing to do with grasping control of your straw man or changing you from public to private or private to public or any of those things. It's all a scam. But by putting that extra time constraint on you, it makes you think about things in a way that make you feel, if I don't make a split-second decision here, I might lose out entirely on that straw that I'm grasping at. And again, that need and greed step in for you. Okay, so let's recap here. The anatomy of a scam. The first thing is to make you extremely, extremely angry to the point of rage, which instills the distraction principle. And while you're distracted by what retains your interest, con artists can do anything to you and you won't even notice. Cognitive thinking and rational thinking goes right out the window. Social compliance principle tells you that if a person is acting in the place of someone who is in the know or someone of authority, such as what the con artist is at that moment, that you need to actually be listening to that. That you are in some secret special club and you will be ahead of everyone else. The herd principle helps to assist in the social compliance principle, because if you start asking questions that are cognitive questions that say, hey, I don't know about this. Maybe I should start asking some questions. This goes against the basic principles of accounting, or this goes against the basic laws that I know are actually true. The herd will attack at that point. The herd is actually what they call the sheeple, the people that are believing the con artist and are willing to attack you for asking questions. They're under the same issue, the same principles of the scam as you are, and they believe what they are doing is correct. The dishonesty and the deception principle. The dishonesty principle is your own larceny, which hooks you initially. Therefore, anything illegal that you do will be used against you by the fraudster, even if the fraudster is the fraudster. I know, it sounds crazy, but the truth is that if you buy a package that is a fraudulent package and you start filing this paperwork, it's on you. You are the one responsible. Making you believe in the deception principle, that things and people are not what they seem to be. Your governors are not really your governors. They're criminals that are trying to take everything from you. People that are leading your specific communities are all on the side of the big quote-unquote cabal. Quite often this includes anti-Semitism. For the white supremacist, it's a racist issue. For the black separatists, it's a racist issue. It's an ugly, ugly scenario that these things are come out of, this particular scam that I'm talking about here as an example. Finally, the need and greed principle. Your own needs and desires, your own greed is what makes you vulnerable to these types of scams. And finally, the time principle in the scam, and that is that you are under time pressure, that whether or not that person stops selling the packages here in the next few months, you might miss out. Or if you don't file your paperwork by 2020, you might not be able to get it again, and you might miss out. Grasping at those straws, and they keep you grasping at them, because this scam does other things to add to these principles, which is you file the paperwork fails, and that just means more paperwork is needed, and that's how the scam continues to go. Ultimately, I'm going to summarize this all by saying that the martyr and victim complex absolves you in your mind from taking responsibility. Taking responsibility and being accountable for our actions is much harder than finding someone or something to blame. Our society has a serious problem with taking responsibility. Do you remember when I spoke to you about the fact that conservatives generally believe, as a core principle, that taking responsibility and action on their own behalf is what keeps them separate from what they deem to be a progressive? And they keep that close to them under normal circumstances. They believe in hard work, getting paid a fair wage, and not giving funds away willy-nilly, making sure that they research properly anything that's an investment or a charity that they might be looking at getting involved with. They believe in taking full responsibility. They don't believe in handouts in most scenarios. But in this very scheme, in this very scam that we have used as an example here, there's no self-awareness anymore once the scam has been done. Because you are fundamentally changing your belief structure to one that says, I'm a conservative and I believe in working hard, paying my own bills, and keeping money close to the vest, to all of a sudden, now I believe that I should get a handout. Now I believe that I should be able to get into these accounts that I never set up, had nothing to do with, and whether they are there or not, I will do anything that it takes to get my hands on this money. That is the need and greed principle in a nutshell. What is the problem today, and why are people getting scammed so much? Ultimately, it comes down on the fact, with the exception of a few groups of people like the disabled and the elderly. And I'm not saying all of those either, because many are aware of the fact that they should be taking responsibility and being accountable for their own actions. But the bottom line is, in general society, we have a serious problem. And that problem is taking responsibility for our own actions, having this martyr victim mentality, this personality trait that is so incredibly damaging, not only to yourself and your own family, but to society in general. If we don't start taking responsibility for our own actions, for our own research, for our own care and needs, then we are doomed. And scam artists are exploiting this left and right. And we have many of them right here on YouTube. All right, everybody, I hope this was helpful to you. Please leave your comments with regards to this in the comment section. If you have questions, you're welcome to email me at virgotriad@protonmail.com. Don't forget that we still have the campaign for virgotriad.com going. And that is to set up a separate platform on the virgotriad.com website that we're working on right now that will include things like support forums, victims funds for people that are disabled and elderly that have fallen for scams. We're working on a debunking index that will assist people to not fall for scams, and many, many other things. It is very important. It's something that's desperately needed, and nothing like this is out there on the web right now to deter people from falling for things like this terrible TDA account scam. All right, I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. I hope you found this helpful. And as I said, anybody who has questions or comments, feel free to either email me or leave them in the comment section. Everybody have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.